Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen O'Brien, and welcome to All About the Gig. I'm extremely excited to introduce our first guest. But before we do, I just got to run through some quick housekeeping items. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit the questions. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephen O'Brien, and welcome. Don't mind that. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to submit them in the comments section, and we will try and get to those questions towards the end of the stream. So our first guest, I'm super excited to introduce. Been looking forward to this all week. Our first guest has been a lighting designer for more than 20 years. He's a lighting designer for one of the biggest rock bands in the world, The Killers, and has been for the past 15 years. He has also recently just finished the Wasteland Baby tour with Hozier. Other clients include Rage Against the Machine, Aerosmith, and Gavin James, just to name a few. He's toured all over the world, worked on productions in amazing venues such as Wembley Stadium, Madison Square Garden, and the Sydney Opera House. With The Killers, he's also designed lighting for television performances on the biggest TV shows in the world, such as Jules Holland, Jimmy Kimmel, and Ellen DeGeneres. To top it all off, he's recently picked up the MA Lighting Award for Club for his tour with Hozier on Wasteland Baby Tour. So with that, I'm delighted to introduce Stephen Douglas. Stephen, welcome.
How's it going?
Doing great. Unbelievable, Stephen. Just looking at your career to date, everything you've done is unreal. So absolutely buzzing to chat to you. I suppose if we just jump off and maybe give us a background to yourself and like where you're from and how you got into lights.
Yeah, I'm from Dublin, born and raised here. So kind of always wanted to get into lights. Never really had inklings to be a musician or to be on stage. I always found the backstage element more interesting of it. So I was always the person who, when you go to gigs, would be like, oh, this is cool or that's cool. And, you know, I used to go to a lot of shows as well when I was a kid. I would always be the one going into I can't remember, Record Collector, is it, at the bottom of Grafton Street? They used to do like a thing where you could put a $5 deposit on a ticket on a Friday before it went on sale. So it actually got to the point where my mother worked on Grafton Street around the corner in the wedding shop, and she would go in and put the deposits on for me. And so a lot of these big, you know, guys with tattoos and long hair, you know, oh, Mrs. Douglas, how is it? What is it this week? Oasis, Smashing Pumpkins, you know. I'd be going to gigs as many nights a week as I could. From, I think I went to my first, I don't know when I started going to shows, probably when I was about 11 or 12 years old or something like that. But yeah, I always found the production element of it far more interesting to me than anything else. So yeah, just kind of got an interest in it from there. Knew when I left school that that's what I wanted to do. So I went to Inchicore VEC I did a diploma in theatrical stage management and production design. But because I'd done my leaving cert really young, I left school when I was 16. So I was finished college at 18. So from there, then I was harassing local bands that I knew, and it was, I have to actually give a shout out to Angus from Picture House, because this is all his fault really. Myself and my sister used to go see Picture House play a lot in way back, and I was bugging Angus, going, you know, do you need a hand? Do you need help? Any gigs? I want to get in, get a bit of experience. He was like, yeah, but don't come to these little silly gigs that we do, like the Speaker Connolly and all that. He goes, come to the Olympia next time we do the Olympia. So I rocked up to the Olympia one morning, knocked on the door, said, Angus told me to come in and help. And I went in, and yeah, my first day, I think, consisted of cutting gels for park cans, going out and getting bacon butties for people, and putting a bet on the Grand National for somebody. And that was it.
Amazing. That's so funny.
Yeah, and then at the end of it, I asked the chief electrician Terry. I was like, "Who do I give a CV to?" And he's like, "I don't do CVs. Give me your phone number." And a couple of weeks later, he called me. I was working in Superquinn at the time as well in the evenings, and he called me. He was like, "Somebody's after dropping out. I need a follow spot operator. Can you get here tonight? Have you done follow spot before?" I was like, "Sure, I have." And got off the bus on my way to my job, crossed the street, got on the other bus going the opposite way into town. Did the gig that night, called in sick, and then spent probably about another 4 or 5 months calling in sick at the last minute to go do shows, and then left there and went to do it full time. So
amazing. It's funny. I actually started my career in the production world as well, the exact same way. I remember knocking on the door to the Olympia and going in and asking John Chizzy, who still works actually, can I come in and work for free? And I remember walking in the door and I just couldn't believe I was actually in there, because it's just one of those venues that has
it's like
it's bars and and you look at the walls and the photographs that are on the walls are just amazing.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was a great place to have as a learning experience, because so many different types of shows came through there in the average week. I remember one week we had I think we had the Bolshoi Ballet, and we were running into Bear in the Big Blue House or something, a load of comedy shows and Foo Fighters all in the same week. And then you had Midnight at the Olympia, which was another beast in its own right. You would finish a show at 10:30 and the doors would open at 11:15, so you'd have to load a band out, load another band in, sound check, probably behind the curtain, program for 10 minutes. Some days where you would program via camera from the side of stage to front of house so you could see what the lights were doing. And it really kind of taught you to learn on your feet.
Amazing. Yeah, for sure. I suppose maybe for anyone that's watching that maybe doesn't have a great background of lighting or what a lighting designer does, would you be able to maybe give us a breakdown of kind of the responsibility and roles of a lighting designer on a big production?
Yeah, generally, I mean, it depends on what you're, as you get into the larger productions, it depends on what your level is going to be. If you're going to be the production designer, the lighting designer, the lighting director, obviously all that varies. Production designer would be the overall everything of the show, the stage, the video, the set, all the content on the screens, the cameras, lasers, pyro, and then lighting as well. That's kind of pretty much what I've done with the Killers for a long time. And then other people I do that with as well, like the Cores, I did it with Gavin James, Hozier. Then other things where you would just be lighting designer, you would work under a production designer or creative director. You would be then solely in charge for designing around the parameters of what their vision for the show is. So that would be like Aerosmith. When we did the Las Vegas residency for Aerosmith, they had a very definite idea of what they wanted the set to look like, where things needed to move in and out, video screens that move, big pieces of set. So then our job was to design the lighting rig to fit around all those elements. So rather than having a blank sheet to start from, we had very definite areas that we could work within. So from there, once you do that, then you sit down, you make your drawing, you decide what lights you want, where you want them, why you want them, most importantly. And then it's then from there, you have to do pictures for the band, renders, have conversations, then start thinking about plotting cues, and then when you get on site in rehearsals, programming the show and then running it and operating it. And if at that point you decide you're going to step away, a lighting director could go and do the tour for you once you've kind of got it all locked. That especially works in a kind of more theatrical show. Traditionally, like a Broadway West End thing, you would have your lighting designer there. They would do the first couple of shows and then they would leave. And that's kind of what we did with Aerosmith, because we knew that Cosmo Wilson, who was their longtime lighting director, he was always going to be running the show because he has such a great relationship with the band. So we were only looking after the Vegas element of it. So we did the show, we did the design, we did the first couple of gigs, but he operated everything. And then as soon as everyone was happy, we walked away, and then then that was that.
Super, yeah, super. You kind of touched on it there briefly, but like what actually goes into designing like a show with the client? Like, let's say O'Brien, my band, we're like, hey Stephen, we're gonna do it. We just got signed and we're doing like an arena tour. Like, how does it go from the concept phase right into like the implementation phase? And a part two of that question, which maybe I'm jumping the gun a bit, but once you have it locked down, how do you then go into pre-production and rehearse it with the band to get the set list locked down and the timings? Because obviously it's so based on the set list, and like, how does that kind of all work? Kind of a long question.
No, pretty common question actually. Generally for me, it always starts with music. So I always sit down with the songs a few months in advance and have sit in a dark room, listen to it, and ideas start to come out of your head. You start to pick up on if there's a theme running through an album, or if there's certain touch points within certain songs that okay, well, we know this song is about this, so we want to find a way to convey that. Like the last Killers tour that we did, Wonderful, the sound was very big, it was very expansive. Obviously Las Vegas is such a big thing for them, but we'd done a lot of the neon and light bulb Las Vegas previously. So this time we knew we wanted a big, expansive area for them to play on, something like like the desert. It had to be big, it had to be wide open, and that led us down the path of this huge screen that wrapped around them and various props and stuff like that. So yeah, it really just starts with the songs, and then I start to think, okay, what would I like the lights to do at this point? Okay, well, when it drops down to just the keyboard bit, I want just this light from this angle, and I just want this. And then you start just to sketch ideas on a bit of paper or in Vectorworks on the computer, on an iPad or whatever. And then from there, that's how you build your structure. You build outwards from there. So yeah, I mean, it always has to start from the music, and it has to start with a conversation with the artist as well about how they see it, because at the end of the day, you're helping portray their vision for their songs to how many hundreds of thousands of people every night. So it's got to be intrinsically linked to what they're trying to put across anyway.
Absolutely, yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, I remember seeing a band recently and kind of really kind of landing that there's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of, is there kind of two ways of programming a show? I remember, like, for my brief kind of stint as a lighting tech I did it for maybe like a year post in my college, and then kind of went down the sound route a little bit more. But I remember there being like this kind of like the way of busking a show, and then there's this kind of more of a time code where it's strictly like once you hit go, it goes the whole way through, sort of. I used to really enjoy personally doing the busking aspect. Yeah. What aspect of your shows are completely like time coded towards busking? If you could give an explanation of what time coding kind of is, I'm not really 100% on what it is.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways of running shows, obviously. So the busking thing is just you set yourself up a menu, basically. So you have yourself a menu of things. Okay, my red is there and my blue is there, and that's there. These lights are on this handle, these lights, and here's the strobes, and here's the audience lights. And then you just play it live without any structure to it. You're very much making it up as you go along. That's kind of the approach we take when we go to do festivals, if we're not headlining and carrying a lot of our own gear. Time code is the complete opposite end of things, where you would have a very, very rehearsed show, and you take, with every single cue programmed on a timeline, you then take a time code feed from the band, and they have little time code as a track that runs alongside the music. Excuse me. So yeah, they would have a little track of time code audio that runs alongside the music, and you can then stamp lighting cues into that. So when they play that music back at any time, the lights will always go to that cue. Everything will always happen on exact millisecond perfect timing. That's great and everything, but it does mean you have to have a very rehearsed show. You can't change the music. You can't suddenly decide to throw an extra 4 bars in here or throw a guitar solo in there, because then all of your lighting cues are going to be off. because the time code will continue no matter what they play. I've done a couple of tours like that. We did some stuff with Britney where it was time coded. The Kylie Minogue tour I did was all time coded. We had a lot of manual cues that I could still do every night anyway, and then there was lots of follow spot calling to do every night as well for that. So it was still quite a busy show. But that show is so rehearsed and choreographed that I know when that light comes on at that drum beat, that dancer will be standing in that position, you know. So the Killers thing and pretty much everything else I've done, there's no time code. I mean, the band are notorious for just deciding, you know, oh, we're gonna throw, you know, we have set lists where even for a week or two after they change something, it'll have like one that springs to mind was they constructed this segue from Runaways into Read My Mind on the last tour, and Brandon decided he wanted to add an extra 8 bars of keyboard at the start for him to do a little call and response thing with the audience. And then for a couple of weeks on the set list, it would always have extra 8 bars written beside the track, because even it was a reminder to them as well. So we could never do time code with them. It just wouldn't be possible.
I'm imagining when you did work with Aerosmith and Rage, that those would not be time coded either.
No, the Rage thing was definitely not time coded. We carried no lights on that whatsoever.
Yeah,
that was we did a festival run in Europe based around their Finsbury Park show that they did for the Christmas #1 thing, the big free show. So we did a festival run around that, and then we did a couple of shows in America as well. But yeah, we did those tours, and I remember rolling into festivals where AC/DC had 40 trucks, and these guys had these many trucks, and you know, this band before us had 8 trucks. We would roll in with a guitar cab, a drum kit, a bass cab, some guitars, and a backdrop with a red star on it, and that was it. And we used all that local lighting everywhere. So that was very much a book show.
Wow, that's amazing, because they are one of the biggest rock bands in history. I'm surprised to hear that. Kind of suits their personality maybe as a fan. They're not really about that kind of massive like.
Yeah, it definitely ties in with their ethos. That it is very much about the music. It's very much about the energy. They're pretty happy as long as they can see the audience at certain moments, and you know, that's what it is for them. It's that give and take between them and the audience that they really vibe off. So they you know, they don't need any fancy tricks.
Yeah. And so just going back to maybe just the Killers as an example, like once you programmed a show and you have it all down in your head, and you kind of like, do you get an opportunity then to, maybe this is what you're thinking in my head, but you go into a big arena or some sort of big theater and you actually just rehearse the whole show, and you get to actually, is that how it works? Yeah.
So generally I would do maybe like a week or so of previs on a computer with, you know, a 3D version of the stage, just to get basic ideas in. But then we would go into a big space, whether it be a film studio, sound stage, old arena that's not being used. I mean, so difficult, especially in America, to find an arena that's not busy with all the different sports that goes on indoors over there. At that, you know, right at the time of year when concert touring is at its highest, you've got hockey teams and basketball teams all vying for nights. So you've got to find an older arena maybe that's not in use anymore, or like I said, more likely a film studio that's not being used. We would load in there, sit there for maybe a week or 10 days if we're very lucky, and yeah, the band would rehearse during the day, and then I'd program overnight.
Amazing. Just to give people a quick insight to what kind of your office desks looks like, I'm just gonna pull up this picture.
So this from, where's that venue? That is the Borgata in Atlantic City.
So this is kind of like where you do. This is where you operate the show essentially, and you would program the show on a laptop and then transfer it to this console.
Yeah, program some of it on a laptop on the same software. So this is the Grand MA2, which is my console of choice. Then yeah, they have like a non PC version and a 3D a 3D render version that we can all tie in together. And so I'll do some basic programming on that. Although, I mean, most of Aerosmith was actually programmed virtually, and then you just load it onto a USB key and put it in the console, and away you go.
And I suppose there's probably loads of people on this that will see this that are technical. So would you be able to give us a quick rundown of, so you mentioned your go-to console for lighting, maybe just run on like your basic fixtures, front thrust, back thrust, your moving heads, the basic fixtures you like to work with?
It really does depend on the job. I have workhorse stuff that I would go to, especially if you're doing a festival tour. I would generally go with workhorse stuff. So I like the Martin Viper. That's been a favorite for a long time. And Martin make another hybrid kind of beam fixture called the Axiom, which is nice. But yeah, it generally, if we're going into festivals, it'll definitely be, I'll always ask for a couple of straight trusses, some strobes, some audience lights, a load of Vipers, a load of wash lights, and then anything else that's kind of proprietary to the show, we would always bring ourselves. Unless we're doing like some sort of a fly day, we're just flying in, we'd try and get it sourced locally, but we'd always have a ground package and a screen and, some sort of thing going on the back wall. But yeah, it does really depend on the job. For Gavin James, it was completely different. When we did the 3 Arena with Gavin, it was very heavy on tungsten fixtures and a lot of light bulb stuff. And then next tour we scrapped all of that and went very heavily into LED battens, and I don't know what they're doing nowadays. A friend of mine from Holland, Jolien, is actually looking after Gavin now. So because he was so busy while the Killers was out and Hozier was out, we had to get somebody else to look after it.
So I've been dying to ask you this question. I'd love to hear the story on how you landed the Killers gig, and just give us hit me with how that went down, man. That's I'm dying to know.
Wrong place at the right time, right place at the wrong time. I don't know which. I worked in the Olympia then. From after that Picture House gig, I worked in the Olympia for probably about 6 or 7 years. And I was also looking after the Ambassador when they opened that for a while as a concert venue. So I was kind of going between the two, and the girl who was in the Olympia called me, and she'd had a really rough run of shows, and she's like, I need a night off. Can you come in and cover a show? I went in, did the show, and she was like, it's some American band. I've never heard of them, the Killers or something. And I went in, just used the house rig, dialed up my busk page, and away we went. And it was a really short show. I remember that. It was probably on like 45, 50 minutes because they only had one record out. So I remember getting to the encore and me going, oh, I know these guys. And I'd actually lit them once before without knowing who they were.
What song was it that you were? Was it Mr. Brightside?
It was obviously the Lifestyle ad, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Remember that? That's I think that's how most people in this got. I think that's probably how they got so big here. It was that Lifestyle ad. It was on every ad break, wasn't it? So, so I realized when they played Brightside that I'd actually lit them at Oxygen earlier that summer when they headlined the new band stage.
I think that was you actually. Was that the same year Muse headlined one of the other stages? I think it was.
Might have been, yeah. It would have been 2004.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And they headlined a new band stage, and they played because that Lifestyle thing hadn't happened yet, so I didn't know any of the songs. So they just kind of came and went, and I never really paid attention to who they were. And then they came to the Olympia in November, and that's where I met them. So, and then after that, I don't know if they had a bad experience the next day or if they just had a bad gig and realized they wanted a bit of security. I just happened to be the last person who did a decent show. But yeah, I got the call.
Stephen, maybe you were just really good.
Who knows? Who knows? I'm still getting away with it. It's only been 15 years.
There's a question on the stream there that says, what happens if you miss a cue? I presume he means like if you miss, have you missed a cue on a big gig for a big moment, and maybe you got a list, or how's that work?
Oh yeah. If you miss a cue, miss it in every verse, and then it's on purpose. It's a design choice then.
It's like jazz. Keep playing the wrong note.
Yeah, I didn't play the wrong note. You were in the wrong place. No, of course. I mean, I don't know how many shows I've done with the Killers, over 1,000, and then everyone else as well. I mean, you're bound to miss a cue. Musicians play bum notes. Everyone misses a cue at some point. It's not that big a deal. The worst one is when big technical failures happen.
Right.
That's always worse, because then you're kind of left standing there. They're the ones that people notice.
Yeah, I remember actually that happened to Rage Against the Machine at Oxygen the year they played. The front of house PA kept cutting out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That happened on Rage in LA as well. It was the last show they've done until now, until whenever they get back together. It was the LA Rising Festival, and literally on the downbeat of Testify, first song, the PA went out. But their monitor rig is so loud that the band has no idea. They don't wear ears, but they've got side fills for days. Everyone's on wedges. It's all screaming loud. And they just kept playing.
Yeah, they just kept going, rocking on.
There's a video on YouTube of it where you can see it happens twice in the first song. And then after that, it was fine.
The
rest of the show.
I think it was the production. So like
all the time.
Yeah, nature to rock and roll, I suppose. And like
electricity, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so do you have, like, this is going to sound a bit weird, but do you have a Killers WhatsApp group where like you all like talk to each other, like a production group, or?
No, not really. No. No, the crew do, but yeah, generally everything we do over email or over the phone or whatever. Most times I'll fly out and we'll sit down and have production meetings after we kind of get a few ideas going on email. I'll go out and sit with them and listen to some songs, but also they're one of those bands who, even on their time off, they're never really off. So we're always doing festivals. There's such a big festival draw nowadays that if we're having a year off, there could still be 10 big festival shows that happen throughout the year as one-offs. So we're kind of always in contact anyway.
Absolutely, yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I mean, like, they're always gigging. Every time I see, like, they seem to just be constantly touring. So I mean, that means you're constantly touring, I'd imagine. But
I think I've missed 2 shows
ever.
Yeah, 3.
Oh.
3.
Yeah. So anyone that saw Killers, that was Stephen Douglas's lighting blowing us all away. Officially.
4. 2 corporate shows. There was two private corporate shows that I couldn't do. One I was gutted about because it was on the Apple campus in Cupertino. Could have gone to the motherland.
Man, you could have been to Apple. Yeah, I actually drove through it. It's nice.
It was right in that green part in the middle. But I still designed it and then just sent a friend of mine out to operate it. Awesome. And then I missed one from my wedding and one from my brother's wedding, and that was it.
That's fair enough. I think excuses to miss a Killers show.
Yeah.
And I mean, like the type of clients you work with, like, they're extremely high, I suppose, in celebrity status. Like, how do you manage that? Like, do you ever get starstruck, sort of, in a way, like, with your clients? Do you ever get overwhelmed by, oh my God, this is like Rage, or this is Aerosmith, Steven Tyler's in front? Like, how do you manage like that whole process of working with somebody? Is it difficult, or?
No, I think I just have a healthy respect for them all as musicians and as people, and like with anyone, you always try and maintain that thing in your head that they are your boss at the end of the day. They are your employer. So while you can have fun and you can have a laugh, you've always got that thing in your head of, this person is my breadline. Yeah, I don't know if I've ever really been starstruck. There's been a few people who I've gone, wow, they're I can see why, they might inspire that in somebody. I remember the first time when we were programming Watch the Throne, and I knew a lot of Kanye songs already because I'd done a tour with him previously to that. But I didn't know a lot of Jay-Z songs. I knew, some of the greatest hits, obviously. And I was like, oh God, Kanye's got that song and that song and that song and that song, and he's got all the hits. And then the moment Jay walked on stage, I was like, oh, I see it now. He's just such a performer and such a consummate showman. I can see. Oh, now I get why they're,
yeah,
they're equal.
I think he has a sound as well. I mean, it wouldn't be huge in that scene, but I can tell a Jay-Z song when it comes on. It's like he just has
absolutely. That. Yeah, he has a very distinctive voice as well. Bizarrely, I kind of went through a phase of working for a lot of hip hop and R&B stuff with Alicia Keys, and we did some stuff with Britney on Circus. I just did a lot of the TV promo for that to cover for a friend of mine, and then obviously the Kanye stuff, and
yeah. And have you ever met any, like, have you ever seen any kind of divas or experienced any kind of people that have worked on productions and you're like, oh wow, that's
not really, no. Some crew have been worse than most artists.
Some crew, really?
But I think that just comes out of tiredness, people getting a bit stroppy, and I'm sure we've all done it. I'm sure I've done it as well. There's probably many people would say it about me, but it's like anything else. If if you demand perfection of people and you demand it of yourself, some people will respond to that and some people won't.
Yeah, for sure. I want to jump into Glasgow 2019, but before I do, I just want to see if this little clip will play. I'm only going to play a few seconds of it so that my stream doesn't get taken down because I do not. But let me just see if this. So, talk me through getting the call, first of all, that you're lighting the Killers on the pyramid stage at Glastonbury, and just talk me through the whole lead up that goes into a production that big, and like even for yourself personally, like were you nervous that given I think Glastonbury has this thing with everybody, it's the biggest stage in the world.
Yeah, Glastonbury and Coachella, I think, both inspire that kind of personally, it's never really done that for me. It sounds very blasé, but a gig is a gig, and you deal with the parameters of it, and we go. That was actually our fourth Glastonbury. So in 2005, we were second on the main stage to the White Stripes, I think. Yeah, White Stripes. 2007, we headlined the Pyramid stage. 2017 or 18, I can't remember. I think it might have been 17. I can't remember. We did a surprise gig on the John Peel stage at about 5 p.m, and then obviously last year the headliner. I mean, it's still great. We knew obviously months and months in advance of the public announcement that we were doing it, and we were involved in the picking of lights and all that. That was one of those years where we were supposed to be kind of off for the summer. The tour had finished. But like I said, there's such a big festival band that people always drag them in to do a set. So we knew we were going to be doing Glastonbury. So they added a few shows. We did one in Belfast. We did one in Cardiff, and I think that might have been it. And then we did a couple in America as well. But I was actually on tour with Hozier all that year, so it was a bit of a mad week for me. We finished Hozier in America, I think in LA, on a Thursday or something. Flew home on the Friday, and then on Saturday, I think we flew to Greece, did a show in Athens on Sunday, flew to Cork on Monday, loaded Hozier in, and programmed it overnight. Then left Hozier with my lighting director Kitty, who was looking after the show in Cork for me. I drove to Belfast to load the Killers in. Did the Killers on Tuesday. On Wednesday, it was my daughter's school graduation from Montessori graduation. So came home for that. Then went back to Belfast on Thursday. Did Hozier on Thursday. And then while the crew were driving to Glastonbury for Saturday, I flew to Cardiff in the morning, did the Killers at Cardiff Castle that night, then got in a car with the production manager, drove straight to Glastonbury and started loading in at 5 a.m. and then did Hozier at 5 o'clock and the Killers at 10 o'clock.
And like are you just running off adrenaline there? Like it's kind of
like, pretty much. Yeah. We started loading in. We did no rehearsals for Glastonbury. Like Pet Shop Boys, the guys from the Pet Shop Boys came down to Cardiff the day before and rehearsed the song with the band. They did Human and God, I can't remember what the other song was. They did the Pet Shop Boys song. They did that, but we had none of the lights that were going to be at Glastonbury, so it made no difference to me. And it was outdoors, broad daylight in June, so I went straight to Glastonbury with my USB key while they were loading out in Cardiff, and started programming at about 4 in the morning when Stormzy got off stage loading out, and programmed as long as I could. We had all those extra lasers we brought in. I think we had like 30 something lasers brought in for that show.
The video there, that's what I wanted to show, green lasers.
And then even the Johnny Marr thing, I mean, the band had never rehearsed with Johnny Marr.
That was all live?
Yeah, they just said, Johnny just said, I think somebody somewhere, I think that was the first day they'd ever met as well, because he was on the bill. I think he played the other stage earlier in the day. And I don't think they'd ever met. And Brandon is a massive, Smiths fan, but I don't think he'd ever met Johnny before. So I think the first time they met was when he came backstage, but into the dressing room with a guitar right before the show, and they just kind of ran through Charming Man and a bit of Brightside, and then said, "Okay, well, let's just go for it." So
I love hearing those stories, because I'm all about that as well. Just rock and roll, getting up there, lashing it out. If it goes wrong, it goes wrong. If it goes good, it goes good.
Yeah. I know it was fun. Getting to do a Smith song at Glastonbury was cool as well.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, I watched that performance. It was unreal. Like, just the sound of guitar, how he even plays that riff, and I don't know, it's unreal.
And then, I mean, Johnny is supposed to be coming out to open for us in America. Depending on when those dates ever happen, but yeah, so that's great. And then a good friend of mine, actually another Irish LD, Carolyn, is Johnny Marr's LD. So
wow, all connected.
Oh yeah.
And so you mentioned Hozier there a second ago. So when you're moving from, like, let's say programming different shows or working on different shows, let's say you're moving from a huge rock show where it's what we just saw there, flashing lights, as you said, lasers, maybe even a bit of pyro. When you're moving from that to something like Hozier, which I imagine is a little bit more stripped back, maybe not so much in the fixtures, but just the vibe and look. Like, how do you find it more difficult to create more of a vibe on a more stripped back set like that, or is it more about the music and kind of the lighting's not so much part of the show, if that makes sense?
Yes and no. I mean, the lighting is definitely still a part of the show, and I try my best to make it a part of the show if I can. But yeah, I mean, any band you can just put up on a stage and play the song. I mean, the Killers, we did on the last arena tour, they did a thing where they would walk on, not the last one, sorry, the one before. They would walk on with the house lights still on and play Mr. Brightside with no effects, no anything. And then this time around, we actually flipped it, and we would end the show with the disco, the kind of the remix version of Brightside. And then halfway through it, they would stop and start the riff for the real song. And we would turn on every light in the arena and turn off everything on the stage. And they would just play the song, them and the people. And, Andrew Hozier it's very similar. You could put Andrew on an empty stage with a guitar, and he can definitely entertain you for as long as you want. But when you add the other elements, obviously, it kind of enhances the show. But yeah, it is a lot more simple. We didn't carry production for huge parts of that Hozier tour. We only carried some floor lights and a couple of backdrops. So again, it was about a vibe, and it was about an idea that kind of sparked that. And there's massive moments in that show where there's one light on, a tiny little wash on the band, and just one moody off center, backlight on him.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like I said, it really does depend on it is definitely music centric for sure.
Yeah, gotcha. And how do you manage? I mean, I absolutely would believe that the stress, like there must be a lot of stress with live production, like everything being live, as you said, stuff does go wrong, and stuff will go wrong. So how do you kind of, how do you manage that pressure, or do you just have a mindset of, like, what is your mindset to kind of manage pressures like that and stress like that?
It depends on what the problem is. You know, if it's something simple, you know, if it is just that the power is gone in the building, then there's nothing you can do about it. There's no point in getting stressed out. We had it in, I think we were in Peru or something a few years ago, and right on the downbeat of one of the songs, where everything drops to just the guitar player, the entire lighting rig went off. Everything, every fixture, and I had one spotlight on the guitar player, but the band kept playing because, you know, they obviously they assume this is going to come back. It's going to come back. But I had lost intercom to the spotlight operators, and, you know, they didn't speak any English. I didn't speak any Spanish. So I ended up having to climb the tower and just get them to turn on all the spotlights and open them out as big as they can so we could see the people on the stage. So they weren't just finishing the song in the dark. And it turns we'd blown the generator. So they had to swap it out in the encore break and put a new generator in, and then recalibrate all the fixtures. And, you know, normally those things don't take very long. You power up a light, but it felt like a really long time that night.
Yeah.
You know, if it's something stupid, like somebody didn't plug something in properly, then then your action may not be so blasé. You know, but that's definitely happened a few times. But
yeah, you can imagine. I mean, given your clientele list and some of the stuff you've done, from like everything from rock and roll to TV shows and designing, your clientele varies, you know, from obviously the corporate world, as you were saying earlier on, or being in corporate environments even, just right through to mixing the most badass bands in the world, right into the machine, or, you know, doing the lights. What do you think is the key to being kind of successful, I suppose, in A, I suppose, any career, and B, specific to your career?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you've got to hopefully do a good job and keep people happy. 90% of that is about listening to what your artist wants. You know, some of the times you could just have to park your own ego about what you think it should look like. I've had many conversations with people where you know, and in my earlier days, I probably would have been a lot more forthright about my ideas. But now you find, with experience, you find different ways to present these ideas to, you know, gradually make them come around. Or sometimes they don't come around at all. And sometimes you just have to say, look, this is what they want. You know, they are the ones paying the bills, and they are the ones who are standing on that stage. You know, nobody's looking at you at front of house. So, you know, I think, yeah,
absolutely. And did you ever have like early on, like any kind of blockers in your career that maybe someone was saying, oh no, you can't do that, or that's not possible, or you can't get that gig, but you did get the gig, and obviously, and like, how did you overcome those blockers, and like what would you give advice for anyone that's maybe, you know, that has a blocker, essentially, like whatever it may be, experience or whatever? What would be your advice to someone like that?
You just got to keep going. You know, it's if it's something that you truly want to do, you know, then I would say just keep going. I had a lot of people who thought, you want to do what? That's not a real job. You can never make money from that. And, you know, and I still to this day get people asking me when I'm going to eventually settle down and get a real job. People still think this is a hobby.
You're not giving you're not just sending the YouTube link of like Glastonbury main stage and be like, here, look, I've made it.
Yeah, but like you said earlier, a lot of people don't understand what it is we actually do. You know, my poor grandmother went to her grave thinking that I ran up and down behind the truss turning lights on and off on switches all night, because that's what my dad told her I did. So, you know, a lot of people don't understand what it is you do. And, you know, you've got to be technically minded. You've got to be financially minded. You've got to know your worth. You know, sometimes you have to be politically minded as well and know how to play the game a little There's so many aspects to it nowadays, really.
Yeah. And this is kind of a random one, but if you could go back to like maybe Stephen of 18, what advice would you give yourself at that age?
Get a real job.
Get a real job.
Get a real job. I don't know, because there's always those stock answers, isn't there? Oh, enjoy it more and do this and do that, and I kind of did. I enjoyed it when I was doing it. I was never. I mean, I'm a little bit driven in terms of career, but I was never so driven that I was ignoring the experience. So I always was very appreciative of, like, a big thing for me was Madison Square Garden and Red Rocks and Sydney Opera House. They were 3 big gigs I always wanted to do. And I thought, if I can ever do a gig at one of them, that would be amazing. I've now done, I think, 12 Madison Square Gardens, like 3 or 4 Red Rocks. I've done, I think, 4 nights at Sydney Opera House now. It's, and then as you go, you start to realize that these things are just normal venues at the end of the day. They just have this aura about them, but, it's good to have kind of touchstones in your career that you want to achieve. But also, if you don't achieve them, it can't be that bad. I mean, I'd love to let you two one day, but that's never going to happen. So
no, I got you. And what would you recommend, like, for anyone that's coming out of, like, let's say, the Sound Training Centre or any of these kind of colleges, to, like, I want to be the next Stephen Douglas and I want to like the next biggest band that's coming up?
Just try and get as much experience as you can. Get as much experience as you can. Make as many good relationships as you can. And if it doesn't happen, don't be down about it, because a lot of it is luck. I was lucky that I was there that night. I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't have gone on to do other gigs, but I was lucky that the Killers were the band that played that night and I was there. And it's then up to you to make the most of that little slice of luck that you get, and hold on to it, really. Yeah.
Cool. Just going to pull in a question from comments. I think this. So, is there any one particular decision mindset that you made early on that you feel led you into high-profile work like you do now? Obviously, such as like Hozier.
No, I don't really think there was one particular decision. I think obviously the decision that this is what I wanted to do. Yeah, probably that. Like I said, my even down to guidance teachers in school didn't understand. They were like, they're kind of lumping me in with the guys who wanted to play football. Like, yeah, whatever. That's not going to happen. Anything that led me, any decision that led me to that? No, I mean, the decision to do it is what I guess ultimately led me here. But like I said, I always wanted to do it. It was just a case of whether I would get the opportunity. So I just kind of worked as hard as I could to get that opportunity. I mean, I remember days and weeks gone by where I wouldn't even leave the Olympia, where I think I've slept in every dressing room in that building.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, you bring a bag in, and it wouldn't happen nowadays. But
that's commitment there.
Health and safety would have something to say about it now. But yeah, we used to finish midnight gigs, and then do a couple of hours to start re-rigging for tomorrow, and then go sleep in a dressing room for a few hours, and then get up and do the day. And especially during, like, the busiest time of the year was always December, so it would be panto season. So when you were trying to turn around, because it's such a busy venue, you don't get that buffer of time. There's always gigs right up to Christmas, and then you're slammed. You have to turn it around overnight almost to get ready for the panto to come in and rehearse. So
absolutely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've slept in many venues all over the world.
Have you seen those flight cases that you can, like, actually put a little hammock inside some of the ones?
I don't have a tour hammock anymore, but I have one of these. I don't know what they're called. It's in my attic over there. It's an inflatable sofa, but you open the end of it and you run with it and catch air, and then you roll it up and tie it up, and it becomes an inflatable sofa. But it folds down into a bag about this size. It's great.
You must be the travel wizard. Like, having traveled so much, you just know all these little perks.
Oh, yeah. Roll your clothes. Don't fold them. Roll them.
Yeah. I'll just take another question here. As an upcoming artist, be a musician, sound or light engineer, any advice on how to get a foot in on building a name in a saturated market? That's a pretty good question, actually.
Again, like I said, just try and make as many relationships as you can. I was quite lucky in that when I started doing this, 20 something years ago, when was it, 97? So yeah, 23 years ago. I was lucky that it wasn't as saturated as it is now. You have a lot of places like Lipa and Rada and all those places in the UK now churning out a lot of crew. It wasn't as heavily saturated for people then as it is now, but it's still quite a small cottage industry, really. So yeah, just get in, make an impression on somebody, because it is definitely a word of mouth business. It's people go, oh, do you know somebody who can open for this band if you're a musician, or do you know a guy with a guitar who can play this gig, and or do you know a sound engineer, do you know a lighting guy? And people all talk, everyone talks in this business, and eventually somebody will recommend somebody for something. We were saying obviously Mark Carolan, who's one of the biggest sound engineers around, another Irish guy, and me and Mark used to do Turn, Irish band called Turn, who are still going. We used to do their shows together way back when, and like Saturday mornings in the music centre.
Oh, wow.
What's it called now? The Button Factory?
Yeah, Button Factory, yeah.
We would do like Saturday morning shows in there with Turn, and we'd do wheel-ins, and then Mark went off and he was already made quite, he'd already made a name for himself at that point, but he was doing JJ72, which then I believe led to him doing Muse, and he's been with Muse forever. And then funnily enough, we actually came back around a few years ago, myself and Mark, when we were both doing Gavin James in the 3 Arena. He was doing front of house and I was doing lights, so that was interesting.
Nice little whip around there. Yeah, I'm actually trying to get Mark on the show, so
good. He's a good guy. We spent years seeing each other at festivals all over the world as well, because Muse and Killers would be on the same schedule, and a lot of these festivals like in Australia and America where you'd have stages side by side and Muse would play here and Killers would play there, so and he was at Snow Patrol for a good while as well. So
the 2 Irish lads, you must have been known as the 2 Irish boys.
That's it, yeah. I do remember once getting we were doing the MTV Awards in, I think it was in Amsterdam, and Tom Kenny, who's a huge Irish lighting designer, he lives in Miami now, and Baz Halpin, who's a creative director, he's from here originally as well, he lives in LA, and the 3 of us were at front of house, so Tom had to get a photograph of the 3 of us together and send it to a couple of the guys at MCD. The Irish taking over the MTV Awards.
I'm just going to pull in another question here. I know we're running up in time now, but what types of color schemes do you use to create different vibes? Color in lights must be so important.
It is definitely important. Yeah, like I said, when we're starting to kind of the process, I sit down with the track and I'll sit there and go, right, first listen through, just headphones on, close your eyes, dark room, whatever. First listen through, what do I see? What color does it make me feel? Obviously there's, the ones that people think of all the time, like red and green being rage or jealousy, blue, certain shades of blue being relaxed and chilled out or sad or whatever. But you try, obviously if you're with a band for a long time, you have to change things up as you go, and you change color schemes. So, you try and find a fresh way to do it. I don't try and think, okay, well, this is a sad song, so it's got to be blue. The initial thinking will always give one color, though. You'll always go, oh God, I don't know why, but I just see red, or I see, magenta. Killers of a song called "Smile Like You Mean It," and first time we did it, we lit it in kind of red and Congo UV. So it was kind of very foreboding and kind of hulking feel to it. And I think that's the only one we've never changed. We've changed the cue structure and we've changed what the lights are doing, but every time Brandon's been like, keep it that color, that palette, he likes that one.
Yeah. I'm just going to pull up a picture here. So it's something like this, like you can see it's kind of two really predominant colors. Like, do you kind of generally, have colors in mind for specific songs, or do you stick to like sets of two here, for example, or maybe on the
I generally like to say not too many crayons at the same time.
Right.
I'm not a big fan of multicolor, really busy looks, but that's just a personal preference. I mean, I've also done Kylie Minogue shows where we've had rainbow chases on the stage, so it's definitely whatever suits the music. But yeah, generally my general rule is no more than two colors at the same time, and then obviously a base color for people's skin, especially if you're trying to light it for camera. I'm not big into multicolor, but again, like I said, that's purely a personal preference.
Gotcha. Cool. We're coming up on time, so I might ask you one more and then I'll let you go. I might hit you with actually one more question and then maybe 3 or 4 quick fire ones, just answers, and then I'll leave you go back to your Friday night. I suppose being a musician like myself and working in the industry as well, for me, the biggest part of any show, and I spend most of my time YouTube and this stuff, is the first song really for me. Like no matter who I go to see, it's the first song, way more than the encore for me. It's just that I love that moment of when the lights drop, and the house lights, that usually not so great house lights drop, and then bang, it comes on. Like, do you what does that feel like? Do you still feel the same way now, like when you did maybe back in the Olympia and that, when you were started off? Do you still get the same buzz from like, boom, we're live, and like, the lights come on and everyone's just going mad? Like, do you still feel that kind of energy and buzz?
Yeah, most of the time. Again, it's that thing of, you do so many shows, you don't get blasé about it, but you do kind of get used to it. I mean, obviously we know none of the cheering is for us, but it still feels nice. But yeah, no, especially the first night of a tour, if you're debuting something new, and nowadays in mobile phone and YouTube and social media culture, the opening to your show is only new for one night, no matter where you play in the world, because by the time the show's over, it's online, everyone's seen it, everyone knows when they come to the show what to expect, they know how the show's going to start. Obviously if you start your show the same every night. So yeah, the first time, especially if it's something that's technical and difficult, if it works without a hitch, then it's amazing. But I think after all this ends and we all go back to work, hopefully, and I think the first time I call house lights, I will definitely feel that the cheer a bit stronger than I probably have recently.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, just to touch briefly on the whole COVID-19, what are your thoughts on how the industry is going to look after it? And
I have no idea. I don't know. People far more intelligent than me will decide when we're all heading back to work, unfortunately. I mean, we can only do it when it's safe, There's been a lot of cancellations, obviously. We've seen most of our year blown out. I've had jobs in November and one for next February already cancelled. So yeah, it's going to be a tough year, but I think next year is just going to be insane. I think it's going to be crazy busy. I mean, just for the amount of shows that have been cancelled this year and moved to next year.
You reckon next summer is going to be like, even
it's going to be flat, but I think it might also have a pushback effect of maybe 6 months for the bands who wanted to tour next year. because they may not be able to find venue availability now because all the tours from this year have moved to there. You know,
yeah, true. Yeah,
you see a lot of those festivals, especially in Europe, and you know, I know Coachella got moved to October, and if this doesn't pick up by then Coachella will just get moved to next year again. But you see everyone saying, "Oh, we've cancelled. Oh, we're postponing till 2021." Same bill, same artists. You know, then all those bands who would have headlined those festivals next year are gone. Oh, now we got to push a year. You know?
Yeah. What you mean? Yeah.
So yeah, I think venue availability will become a big issue next year, and crew availability and gear and money for people to buy tickets. I mean, everybody's feeling the pinch. You know, no more so than our industry. Will probably certainly be the last industry to come back, because you just can't do social distancing at a gig, can you? You know, I mean, it's you tell people to stand 6 feet apart, it's just not going to happen. They already tried to do that in arenas, the way they plan out the floor, you know, and you go, well, the capacity is done by X amount of space per person, but everyone pushes forward. It's not going to.
Yeah. And
what do you do? You know, I know there was a show in Arkansas that was supposed to happen this weekend in a 1,200 capacity theater, and they had sold 229 tickets, but they had blocks of 12 seats with a row in between and 6 seats left and right of it. So you weren't, and you could buy 2 tickets in that block of 12, or you could buy 12 tickets in that block of 12. But either way, the rest of those tickets didn't get sold if you didn't buy all of them. And the total capacity of the theater was going to be 229 people. And I mean, that's a great way to catch people's attention and go, hey, look, we can do gigs. Well, I mean, financially, it's just not viable, is it? You know, playing half houses and quarter houses to people is just not. You know, you see it even in the West End and in Broadway. I mean, Broadway has cancelled everything through September now already. You know, and I know a couple of big Broadway shows announced last night. They're just not coming back. You know, so that's massive. You know, I know a few people who were working on one of the shows, and they had just renewed the cast a couple of weeks ago. And generally, when they renew, it's a year contract. And then all this hit, they went into shutdown, and now they're being told, no, we're not coming back at all. We're closing the whole show.
Yeah, and that's going to be extremely difficult and a long road. But I mean, hopefully there will be light at the end of the tunnel. You know, I'm hoping it'll bounce back. People are for gigs, get out of house more than ever now, I think. So it's going to be.
People are always going to want to gather in big groups and sing songs together, and you know, I think it'll have to come back. The show will go on because the show has to go on. You know, we'll definitely be back at some point. It's just when.
Absolutely, and I hope to see hope to see the Killers back playing soon.
Malahide next year, I believe.
Yeah, that's it. Looking forward to it. Right, listen, let's do a few questions here, and I'm just going to fire at you real quick. So as soon as it comes into your head, hit me. Apart from U2, one band you'd love to like. You haven't.
Oh God, there's too many. Radiohead, Bowie, Jimmy World, Ash, Pearl Jam. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Those 5.
Nice. They're I saw that. Actually, I saw Jimmy World recently. They were amazing. Their live show was brilliant. A
friend of mine. Good friend of mine does it. It's really good.
Yeah, cool. It's cool to be friends with all these cool bands.
Yeah.
Favorite Killers song?
Whatever the last one is that night. No. To be honest, there's a really great one that they did years ago called "Move Away." That was for like Spider-Man 3 soundtrack or something.
Nice.
And I think I'm probably just saying ones like that or Midnight Show, just because we hardly ever hear them. You know, they don't really play it live that much. The rest of the set is pretty much their staples. You know, they like to give people what they want, so they play the hits every night. So I'm always used to hearing them.
Yeah, I think mine is "Read My Mind." I think it's one of the most underrated songs ever. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely one of Brandon's, I think.
Is it? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Favorite Hozier song?
Live when we did it was "Movement," because we had a kind of we chanced upon a kind of cool lighting thing that we did every night, which always got a bit of a ooh from the audience. So that was always, you know, quite fulfilling the ego a little bit. And, I mean, and then it's hard to argue with Taking You to Church. Obviously, it's just such a good song and such an anthem when we play it in big festivals.
Highest career moment, biggest career moment, pinch yourself moment.
Possibly Wembley Stadium. Yeah, Wembley was a big thing. Maybe the first time I did Madison Square Garden. Yeah, I don't know. Can't really think of anything. Yeah, there's been a lot. There's been a lot of really good ones.
Most famous person you've ever been most starstruck by that you've hanged out with?
Never really been starstruck by anyone. The one that kind of
Stephen, come on.
I honestly haven't.
You're just used to it now.
I think it's because I always expect them to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to such and such a show that person's going to be there because of course they're going to be there. They're in that band. So if I see them, it's not
you're expecting it. Yeah.
I did once get into an elevator at the MTV Awards, and Will Ferrell got in dressed as Ron Burgundy. That was kind of cool.
That was cool.
That was cool. I didn't get to speak to him in character, but I met him later on that night after he got changed out of character, and he was a really nice guy. So yeah, maybe stuff like that. Yeah, maybe it's the ones that you're not expecting to be there. Maybe.
Gotcha. Okay, favorite city? Seems you've been in probably most of them.
Whoa, too many to list. San Francisco, Tokyo, New York, Sydney, Johannesburg. Nice.
Solid answers. Stephen, I think we'll leave it at there, my friend. Just want to thank you so much for coming on and giving us the hour. Really appreciated getting the first episode up. So absolute pleasure chatting to you. And hang on, just when I end the broadcast, I'll just chat to you once we end it. But
thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. Thanks everyone that tuned in to watch as well, and thanks for all the comments and questions that have come in. Thanks Stephen for answering them. If you want to get in contact with Stephen, I have included his contact details below, so feel free to reach out on his website and get in contact if you have any questions or queries. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and thanks very much.